Hello, my name is Charles, and welcome to my channel UK Royals Message, making videos relating to British Royal. By following my interesting videos, you can immerse yourself in the UK history. Please subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon to update the latest content. Let's get started. In today's video, I am going to introduce about some kind of popular cultures in the war areas of British. As a leisure illiteracies, wealth, and ease of travel, a broadened sense of community's grow in Britain from the late 19th century onward. There was one time that an interest in leisure activities of all sorts on all the parting classes, and annual vacations became common. Tourists flocked to science resorts. Blackpool's hosted 7 million visitors a year in 1930s. Organized leisure were primarily a male's activity, with middle-class women allowed in at the margins. There was class differences, with upper-class clubs and working-class and middle-class pubs. Heavy drinking declined. There was more competition that attracted heavy bidding. Participation in sport and all sort of leisure activities increased for the average Englishman, and his interest in spectator sport increased dramatically. By the 1920s, the cinemas and radio attracted all classes, ages and genders, and very large numbers, with young women taking the lead. Working class men wearing flat caps and eating fish and chips were boisterous, full-blown spectators. They sang along at the music hall, fancied their pigeons, gambled on horse racing, and took the family to Blackpool's in summer. The current realizations of this lifestyle handicapped began in 1957. Political activists complained working class leisure divert men away from revolutionary agitation. Cinemas and radio. The British film industry emerged in the 1890s, when cinemas in general broke through in the Western world, and built heavily on her strong reputation of the London legitimate theatre for actors, directors, and producers. The problem was that the American market was so much larger and richer, has brought up to the top talent, especially when Hollywood came to the fore in the 1920s and produced over 80% of the total world output. Efforts to find back were futile. The government set as quotas for British-made films, but it faults Hollywood furthermore, dominated the lucrative Canadian and Australian markets. Bollywood, based in Bombay, dominated the huge Indian market. The most prominent directors remaining in London were Alexander Korda, an expatriate Hungarian, and Alfred Hitchcock. There was a revival in creativities in the 1933 to 1945 era, especially with the arrival of Jewish filmmakers and actors fleeing the Nazis. Meanwhile, giant palaces were built for the huge audience that wanted to see Hollywood films. In Liverpool, 40% of the population attending one of the 69 cinemas once a week. 25% went twice. Traditionalists grumbled about the American cultural invasion, but the permanent impact were minor. In radio's British audience has no choice apart from upskills programming at BBC, a government agency which had a monopoly on broadcasting. John Reith, an intensely moralistic engineer, was a full chart. His goal was to broadcast all that is best in every department in human knowledge, endeavor, and achievement. To present the preservation of the high moral tone is obviously in paramount importance. Sport. The British shown a more profound interest in sport and in a greater varieties than any rival. They gave pride of place to such moral issues as sportsmanship and fair play. Women proved highly attractive to the urban working classes, which introduced a rowdy spectator to the sport world. New games became popular almost overnight, including golf, lawn tennis, cycling, and hockey. Women were much more likely to enter this sport than the established one. The aristocracy and legendary. with their ironclad control over land rights, dominated hunting, shootings, fishing, and horse racing. Crickets reflect the imperial spirit throughout the empire, except Canada. Test matches began by the 1870s. The most famous are those between Australia and England for the Ashes. Reading. As literacy and leisure time expanded after 1900s, reading became a popular pastime. In addition to adult fiction, doubled during the 1920s, reaching the 2,800 new books a year by 1935. Libraries tripled their stocks and saw heavy demand for new fiction. A dramatic innovation was an inexpensive paperback pioneered by Ellen Lane and Penguin Books in 1935. The first titles include novel by Ernest Hemingway and Agatha Christie. They were so cheap, usually 6 pence, and a wide variety of expensive stores, such as Wordsworth, poems aimed at an educated middle class, Mother Brown's audience, and avoiding the dull market image in American paperbacks. The line signals cultural self-improvement and political education. However, the war years caused a shortage of stuff for publishers and bookstores, and a severe shortage of rationed paper, worsened by the air raids on Paternoster Square in 1940 and burned 5 million books in warehouses. Romantic fictions were especially popular with Mills and Bond, the leading publisher. Romantic encounters were embodied in a principle of sexual purity that demonstrate not only social conservatism, but also how heroines could control their personal autonomy, and adventure magazines became quite popular, especially those published by D.C. Thompson. The publisher sent observers around the country to talk about the boy and learn that they wanted to read down. The storylines in magazines and cinemas that most appeal to most boys and was the glamorous heroisms of British soldier fighting war that was exceeding interest.